She needs an injection. I swear to God, I'll kill you both.
Open the door, you'll shoot us.
The story begins with a woman named Meg, who is about to get divorced. She and her daughter were looking for a new house because she would soon be separated from her husband, meaning they could no longer live together. That day, she had seen many houses that she did not like. Eventually, a real estate dealer showed her a beautiful, large house that belonged to a very rich man. It had all kinds of facilities. Since the rich man had died, his family had put the house up for sale for very little money. As soon as the mother and daughter went inside, they liked the house very much and decided to buy it. Meg liked everything about the property. However, when the dealer took them to the third floor, Meg was very confused by something she saw. There was a strange room that looked like a bunker, which could also be called a safe room or a locker room used to hide things. Meg asked the dealer why the owner of the house had built this room. The dealer replied that the previous owner had a lot of money, approximately several $1,000,000. He built this locker room so that in the event of an emergency or an attack, he could retreat inside and save his life. Meg and her daughter went inside to check the room. There were many monitors installed because there were cameras throughout the whole house, and their recordings were displayed there. In addition, iron plating was used inside the walls, and electrified rods were installed on the gate so that anyone trying to enter would be electrocuted. The most interesting feature was the phone, which was designed to never turn off. However, it was not working yet. To get it started, they would have to contact the company that set it up. Meg found this room very strange, but it did not matter to her because she was there to live in the luxurious house, not the room. She paid the money, bought the house, quickly moved her belongings in, and started living there. Her life began to proceed normally, and both mother and daughter were living happily. A few days later, while the mother and daughter were sleeping at night, some thieves appeared outside their house. They were peeping inside, and one man forcibly tried to open the door, when he could not open it because it was locked from the inside. He climbed up and entered through a window. He first opened the balcony door, then went downstairs to open the main door and let his companions inside. One of the thieves, a relatively simple man named Burnham, saw Meg and her daughter. Burnham was a good person compared to the other thieves and had initially refused to participate. He only agreed to steal after being told the house was empty. Seeing the family, he told his companion that he would not steal because people were living there, and he was not willing to kill innocent people. The companion Burnham was arguing with was actually the grandson of the previous owner. The grandson had made the whole plan believing the house was empty. He tried to calm Burnham down, explaining that he had brought a hired killer to put the mother and daughter to sleep so they could steal safely. Burnham still refused to take someone's life and decided to leave. Seeing him go, the owner's grandson scolded him, asking if he still wanted money and revealing that there was over $3 million in the house. Hearing this, Burnham stopped because he desperately needed the money. In the middle of the night, Meg woke up to use the washroom. As she was trying to go back to sleep, she realized she had not turned off the lights in the locker room. When she went to turn them off, her eyes fell on the monitors, and she was terrified to see that thieves had entered the house. Scared, she quickly went to her daughter, woke her up, and told her to be quiet. After explaining the situation,
What are you there for? Shh.
Meg tried to sneak her out of the house. However, she spotted the owner's grandson in the hallway. Meg considered taking the elevator down, but her daughter suggested they go to the locker room where they would be safe. Meg agreed, and they headed to the third floor. Just before the thieves could reach them, Meg quickly pulled her daughter into the safe room and locked the door from the inside. Both were very scared and did not understand what the intruders wanted. Meanwhile, the owner's grandson became furious because the very room they locked themselves in was the locker room containing the millions of dollars, a fact Meg knew nothing about. Meg started looking for her phone, but remembered she had left it in her bedroom. She then tried to use the emergency phone in the room, but it did not work because she had not yet activated it with the security company. Outside, the killer became paranoid and asked if she had called the police, worried they would all be caught. Burnham reassured him that it was impossible because the phone needed to be turned on by the security company he used to work for, meaning he knew every corner of the house's system. Inside, Meg found a button that connected to a speaker system throughout the entire house. She used it to tell the thieves that she had called the police and they would be arriving soon.
Excuse me. The police are on their way.
In response, the owner's grandson wrote on a piece of paper and held it up to the camera. He wrote that she was lying because the phone was not on. Meg was surprised he knew this. She then spoke through the speaker again, telling them to take whatever they wanted and leave immediately. The grandson wrote another note stating that what they wanted was inside the locker room, promising not to harm them if they came out. Meg refused, saying she did not trust thieves and that she and her daughter were not going to come out, no matter how long the men waited. Hearing this, the owner's grandson demanded that Burnham find a way to enter the room. Burnham replied that there was no way to breach it from the outside. They could only enter if someone opened it from the inside. Refusing to give up, the grandson got an idea and started tearing up the floorboards of the room directly above the bunker. Burnham told him he was being stupid, explaining that he had known about these rooms for years, and if they were so easy to break into, people would not install them in their homes. He was right. When the grandson broke through the floor, he hit an impenetrable steel ceiling that he could not break.
Shit.
Down below, Meg was scared by the sound of breaking, but her daughter reassured her that as long as they were in the specially designed room, they were absolutely safe. The owner's grandson then came up with another dangerous idea. He suggested pumping poisonous gas into the room's ventilation pipe to suffocate them and force them to come out. Everyone agreed, and they quickly connected a gas cylinder to the room's pipe. As the gas started spreading throughout the room, Meg's daughter opened 2 emergency bags containing survival supplies. She found 2 fire-resistant jackets, which she and her mother quickly put on. Meg then used a lighter to ignite the gas at the pipe, causing a backdraft explosion. The blast severely burned the grandson's hands and face on the floor above and scattered their equipment everywhere. Enraged and losing control, the grandson screamed loudly, threatening that whether he got the money or not, he would not spare them. Meanwhile, Meg's daughter found a flashlight in the bags. She noticed a large air pipe that offered a view of the house across the street. Hoping to signal for help, she began flashing the light toward the neighbor's house. The homeowner woke up and saw the light, prompting Meg and her daughter to scream loudly. However, due to the distance in the soundproof room, he could not hear them. Thinking it was just a normal light malfunction, the neighbor went back to sleep. Seeing this, their hope completely broke, and they began to fear they would never escape. The thieves had locked all the doors and windows of the house, and the grandson was stubbornly camped outside the safe room, refusing to leave without the money. Through the cameras, Meg saw that the thieves had gone downstairs. Realizing this was her chance, she told her daughter to hold the door open while she quickly ran to her bedroom to grab her phone. The thieves noticed on the monitors that the door was open and rushed back upstairs, but Meg returned just in time to close and lock the door again. The thieves were worried about what she had retrieved, but when the killer saw the empty phone charger in the bedroom, he realized she had taken her cell phone inside. In the panic room, Meg tried to call her husband, but had no signal. She then remembered that she could hardwire the phone into the house's telephone line. She opened a panel, spliced the wires to the phone, and successfully called her husband. She begged him to bring the police as soon as possible because thieves were in the house. Suddenly, the call got cut off because Burnham figured out what she was doing and severed the main telephone line in the basement. By this time, the owner's grandson, in excruciating pain from his burns, accepted defeat and announced he was leaving. However, before going, he mentioned again that there was millions of dollars hidden inside. Hearing this, the greedy killer shot and killed him to ensure he wouldn't tell anyone else. Seeing this murder on the cameras, Meg and her daughter were terrified. Meanwhile, the doorbell rang. The thieves dragged the visitor inside, and it turned out to be Meg's husband. He had made a grave mistake by coming alone instead of bringing the police. As soon as he stepped inside, the killer beat him and had Burnham check his ID, confirming his identity. Filled with greed and bloodlust, the killer held Burnham at gunpoint, demanding to be taken into the safe room, or he would shoot him too. Burnham insisted there was no way inside. Undeterred, the killer formed a cruel plan. He held Meg's husband's ID up to the camera and began mercilessly beating him in front of the lens, hoping to force the mother and daughter to come out. Devastated, Meg began to cry, but a far more urgent problem soon arose. Her daughter suffered from a medical condition and desperately needed her medicine. Without it, she could die. As her daughter's condition rapidly worsened, Meg felt completely helpless. Then, she noticed on the cameras that Burnham and the killer were in a physical fight that dragged them downstairs. Thinking this was the perfect opportunity to get the medicine, Meg opened the door and hurried to her bedroom. She saw a figure lying on the bed and quickly picked up the medicine. Before she could leave, the figure stood up. It was the killer, dressed in her husband's clothes as a trap to lure her out. The killer cornered her, demanding she surrender or be killed. But Meg didn't care about her own life. She only wanted to save her daughter. She boldly pushed the killer aside and sprinted upstairs toward the panic room. However, as she reached the door, she saw Burnham blocking her path, and the killer quickly caught up from behind. She was completely trapped. The killer picked her up and threw her to the ground, causing the medicine to fly from her hands. Taking advantage of the situation, the two intruders rushed inside the safe room. However, right before they could completely close the heavy door, Meg managed to grab the medicine and throw it inside to her daughter. As Burnham hurriedly shut the door to lock Meg out, the killer's hand got stuck in the steel frame, crushing it and causing excruciating pain. He screamed to open the door, but by then, Meg had picked up his dropped gun. Burnham warned the killer that he couldn't open the door because Meg was armed and would shoot them. Aiming the gun at the door, Meg's only concern was her daughter. She shouted that if they gave her daughter the medicine, she promised not to harm them, but if they refused, she would kill them the moment they stepped out. Understanding the situation, Burnham agreed, but he ordered Meg to go downstairs first. Once Meg retreated, Burnham opened the door enough to release the killer's hand. Secured inside, Burnham gave Meg's daughter her medicine. As he treated her, he gently told her that he had a daughter just like her and was only participating in the robbery out of helplessness, claiming his own daughter's life had been threatened if he didn't comply. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was the police, responding to the call Meg's husband had made before arriving. Desperate to keep the intruders from harming her daughter, Meg opened the door but hid the truth from the officers, telling them everything was fine and asking them to leave. Suspicious, an officer told her that if she was being pressured to say this, she just needed to give them a subtle sign. Fearing a shootout would endanger her daughter, Meg gave no signal, and the reluctant police officers eventually left. With the police gone, Burnham broke into the floor safe inside the panic room. He discovered that the stash of bearer bonds was not just $3 million, but a staggering $22 million. He gathered the documents to leave, but as the two men stepped out of the safe room, they were confronted by Meg's husband, who was aiming a gun at Burnham. The wounded killer retaliated by grabbing Meg's daughter as a hostage. The frightened girl begged her father not to shoot, warning him that the killer would execute her. Her father pleaded with the men to release his daughter, offering to let them go. Suddenly, Meg grabbed a hammer and smashed it into the killer's head, knocking him to the floor. Seizing the chance, Burnham grabbed the money and ran out. However, the resilient killer got back up, prompting Meg's husband to start shooting at him. As Burnham was running away, he heard the gunfire and worried the young girl would get caught in the crossfire. Unable to leave her, he ran back inside and found the killer preparing to murder Meg's daughter. Before the killer could strike, Burnham raised his gun and shot him dead, saving the girl's life. Burnham looked at the family and told them he was leaving and that no one would bother them anymore. He fled the house, but finding his escape routes blocked, He tried to break through a boundary wall. However, the police had already arrived and completely surrounded him. Realizing it was over, Burnham dropped the documents, and the $22 million in bearer bonds scattered into the air. Although he was fundamentally a good man who cared for innocent lives and ultimately saved the family, his inherent greed for money led to his downfall, showing how quickly temptation can corrupt a decent person. The film concludes a few days later, showing the mother and daughter talking comfortably. They were once again looking for a new house, but this time, Meg was adamant that their next home would not have a locker, a panic room, or any bunker-like spaces, ensuring they would never have to face such a terrifying danger again.